Hey everyone, my name is Kenneth Strickland. Welcome to Political Science 220. This is a course in international relations. It's my pleasure to have you in this course, this online asynchronous session for spring 2023 here. If you don't know me, if you haven't had a class with me, it's very nice to sort of meet you. A couple of you, I think, have taken my American government class before, so you'll find if you're one of those people, you'll find that the structure is very similar. You also find that sometimes I can't remember what I've said in my American government class and what I say in this one, so you may hear some things twice. So I apologize for that. Looking forward to this semester. So this course in international relations, basically what this video is for. This is kind of commensurate to if I was teaching this in person, and we had that first day of class where we talk about the course expectations, the syllabus, which we'll review here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, my background, specifically how my sort of education in political science sort of guided kind of my career and kind of where I'm at and what I do and why I teach that and all that fun stuff. Just talking about this course on a high level. So this is what we refer to as a survey course, and my American government class is the same in the sense that we're covering a lot of topics that each in and of themselves, each could probably be their own class. But instead of that, we're going to cover a lot of topics at sort of a kind of a high level, surface level. So we'll cover a lot of things very briefly, maybe not necessarily get as in depth as we potentially could. But should you decide to take, more advanced coursework in international relations at, the university level or in graduate school, you can dive a little bit more heavily into these. A little bit about my background. So we'll just start from the beginning. I'm originally from Texas, despite the lack of accent here. It comes out when I drink, so hopefully you shouldn't hear that at any point this semester. I grew up in the Dallas area. I went to college at Texas Tech University, which if you're an NC State football fan, I was there in person to see you guys thump my alma mater pretty good this fall. I studied political science and sociology there. Ended up getting accepted into a PhD program in political science at Ohio State, which is where I went to graduate school. My focus is actually American politics, public opinion, political psychology more specifically. So the psychology behind how people make political decisions and preferences and how they vote and that sort of thing. My focus is a little less on international relations, but I did have some requisite coursework in there, and I've so I taught this class in the fall, and that was the first time I taught it. In probably 15 years. So I've been teaching mostly part-time for the better part of 2 decades. Strangely, it's weird how that sneaks up on you. I taught when I was at Ohio State. When I was, I came there when I was 21, so was pretty young and naive. And then also took on a side hustle teaching at Columbus State Community College down the road. I met who would eventually become my wife there. She was in law school at Ohio State. We moved down to Florida, so we were in St. Pete, Florida for 15 years. And I actually, I left graduate school because decided I didn't want to be a full-time political scientist. It just it just wasn't in the cards for me, but I enjoyed doing research. And so after a couple of years of teaching high school, to kind of check off a bucket list item for myself, I went into consumer market research in the private sector. So interesting time. And so this is where I make the connection between a political science education and my career, because my mom definitely said you will never get a job with a master's in political science, particularly if you have no interest in working in government. And proved her wrong. So, this is about circa 2005 or so. All of a sudden, these companies started doing online surveys that had become a thing of customers and prospective customers and that sort of thing. Well, they were looking for people that had specialized training in survey research methods. At the time, there were 3 graduate programs that had an emphasis on that. And so happened that my political science program, because we learned political polling techniques, it's the same as survey research methods. And so I ended up launched a 10-year career in consumer market research. I worked across just about every consumer industry. I was a consultant to Caesars Entertainment, the casino chain, Norwegian Cruise Lines. I was in-house with Home Shopping Network, strangely enough. Variety of restaurants, consumer packaged good products. I've you worked with so many different products, mostly in the field of doing survey research studies to understand consumer preferences and behaviors and that sort of thing. So it's kind of interesting how that's kind of the story of how my political science research led to my career. I am a adjunct faculty member at Wake Tech, which, if you're not familiar with that basically here, here's the skinny. Community colleges can't afford to pay enough full-time faculty members to meet the demand of students, so they desperately throw a very tiny amount of money out there at people with a graduate degree in the subject who might be willing to basically volunteer their time to teach it. And it so happens that I really enjoy teaching this and working with students. And so, at least for now, it's been good. I wouldn't even call it a side job. I consider it a voluntary thing here, but one that I enjoy doing. So, like I said, I was 10 years in consumer research. 2013, I got hired by the Tampa International Airport to start up an in-house market research team. And that was interesting for me. So that was kind of a combination of passions, because I have a lifelong love of aviation since well before even the first Top Gun, which hopefully you've seen by now. Actually started flying when I was 16. Thought I was going to be an Air Force pilot, and things didn't necessarily pan out that way. But had a lot of other opportunities. I'm actually a commercially licensed pilot, although I don't fly for a career. And so working for an airport was pretty phenomenal. I ended up getting into my current field, which is air service development. So what I do is I work with airports to recruit airlines to come fly to their market or to their city. I came here, so like I said, we moved to North Carolina in 2019. My wife and I, we have twin 10-year-old sons as well, so we all came up. I took a job at RDU, was there for 2.5 years, hated it, and went into consulting. So I do the same job. I just work for airports across the country instead of working for just one. One of the last things I did at RDU is I actually brought Iceland Air in here, so now you can fly direct nonstop to Iceland, thanks to me. If you've done that, you're welcome. But now, like I said, I am a consultant, so I work with airports across the country. So that's kind of the long winding sort of story of how I went from political science graduate student to working in the airline industry, which I love. It's really cool. It takes me a lot of places. I don't travel as much as I used to, but one of my sort of growing interest in international relations was that, particularly when I was in Tampa, I traveled so much internationally. Many trips to China and to Europe. I was probably in Europe about every other month or so. Got to actually got to go down to Cuba, which not many people get to do, and broker an airline deal down there. So you'll see over the course of the semester, I'll talk about some of my experiences working with the various embassies and business interests in foreign countries, and sort of bring that experience to the table here as well. So that's that's a lot about me. I'm hoping to learn a little bit more about you. As I'll talk about here in a second, we've got an introductory discussion board where you can introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself as well. So let's talk about this course, and we'll cover the syllabus here. And I'm going to try and share my screen. Despite however many years of pandemic of doing this, I still kind of struggle with it. But let's see if I can. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing my course syllabus. If you're not, I won't find out until I've already recorded this, and I'll have to do it again, which will be very frustrating. So you see information about the class here. This is online asynchronous. I do not have, A, I do not have an office. B, I do not have office hours. C, an interesting fun fact, I've never actually been on a Wake Tech campus. I got hired virtual. I've only taught here virtual. So I couldn't possibly, I mean, if you really want to meet in person, we can find a coffee shop or something. But as a standard practice, Microsoft Teams, if you need to meet or get in touch with me, I'm happy to do that. But the best way is just email. So email me. I'll talk more about that here in a second. This class obviously is online asynchronous. Most of you have probably taken courses like this before. For those that haven't, what that means is that you probably won't see me in person, although I finally met my first Wake Tech student a couple weeks ago because she was a counselor at the Triangle Rock Club camp that my kid does rock climbing at, which was kind of cool. So in asynchronous means that we're not generally speaking, for the most part, you're not going to have specific tasks assigned to a specific time, like you have to be somewhere. There'll be a couple exceptions there when we talk about more about the course here, but that just means that you have to be sort of self-sufficient and responsible there. I'll talk about the structure of the class here. It's basically broken out into modules to help you with that, weekly modules, but we'll go into more detail here in a bit. Obviously, you know how to use Blackboard, at least to the extent to get online and access this video here. But if you have any questions, if you're new to Blackboard or have any questions, let me know. There are resources available for you there. There is a textbook, Introduction to Global Politics. I've got 6th edition in here. I'm not sure if it's been updated since then. That's the last edition I've used there. So naturally, you get the question. I've been, like I said, teaching for the better part of 2 decades. So, do I need to buy the textbook? There will be readings from the textbook. It will cover items that I don't cover in lecture that aren't covered anywhere else. So yes, the textbook is required. The college does require me to require it of you. So, and for those that buy it, I want to utilize it. Most of the time, I use the textbook. Again, it's not going to be heavy readings. Look, you can. Here's the thing about adjunct teaching. If some people try and do this as a stream of income, and if you approach it like that, you're going to make the teaching as easy as possible on yourself. And so you'll see faculty members that'll just be like, "I'm going to give you a bunch of textbook readings and the question at the end of the chapter and an exam at the end, easy peasy. I don't have to do much work, and I get my stipend." Yeah, I have a little bit more pride than that. I don't want to waste your time. And you're also paying for this course, or your parents are, or the state is, or somebody's paying for this class for you. So you should have an expectation of quality here. So all that being said, we will use the textbook. I'm not going to bury you in textbook readings, but there's some subjects actually that this textbook actually can cover better or explain better, a little bit better than I can. And so when we run into that, I'll assign it there. So, if you get a little bit behind, like, I feel like last semester students it took a little bit of time to get the textbook. That's okay. You can catch up. You're not going to get dinged any points on anything the first couple of weeks. Really, it's just kind of leading up to the exam. So you've got time to catch up there. All right, let's go through section 2 here, instructor policies. So I do take attendance for this class, despite being online and asynchronous. So you say, how, Professor Strickland, would you do that? Well, what I do is actually I build in code words to video lectures. So each week you're going to have a video lecture. It's going to correspond. It's basically going to be me going through the PowerPoint slides that I would be presenting as a lecture if we were in person. I will record it very much in this style. And during that video, I will give you a code word at some point and say, hey, submit this for attendance credit. So if you're watching it, it'll be very explicit. You can't miss it. You'll be able to get it and then provide that in the assignment and you'll get attendance credit. It's pretty easy. And it's just to, make sure you're watching the videos. And staying up with the information, because there are things that are covered that if you just flip through the PowerPoint slides, you might miss. I will actually, your first code word assignment, I'll actually give you one for this. So at the end of this thing, I'll give you a code word to submit for credit for this as well. All told, attendance is 15% of your final course grade there. So you'll basically get credit whether or not you submitted the correct code word. I've got a point here on Blackboard. So this obviously class uses the Blackboard learning platform. You're going to want to check in a couple times a week to Blackboard. I will use the announcement function to give you information. If something is super urgent, or if I've made a critical mistake, like I didn't load something, sometimes I'll send an email as well. So make sure you check your Wake Tech email. But Blackboard is the primary area. So the way our course modules will work is that a new course module will open to you by Monday morning. And usually I'll have, if I have an announcement, it's going to be around that time period too, to say, hey, here's what we're working on this week, or, reminders about things coming up. So you want to make sure you at least check in on Mondays. Scrolling down here, I mentioned email is the best way to get in touch with me. Look, one thing you'll get to know about me is that I have a lot of students that in the past who've written me saying, like, I don't want to bother you. You're not going to bother me because, like I said, you're paying for this class. This is this is a service. I have an obligation to respond to you when you email me. That being said, like I said, I wear a lot of hats. I do this. I have a full-time career. I travel quite a bit with my job. I've got twin 10-year-olds. I coach their little league baseball team. All sorts of things going on. So if I don't respond right away, just send me another email and remind me. You're not going to bother me or offend me or anything like that. I just want to make sure that I can get back to you as soon as possible here. I talked about office hours and video conferencing here, so we'll use Microsoft Teams for that, and I'm pretty flexible with regard to time to meet, based on your schedule and work and whatever else you have. Okay. So I took a break in from teaching from about 2013 to last year, and that was mostly because I was doing so much international travel. It was kind of hard to teach even online, and a lot has changed for college instructors and classroom expectations and that sort of thing. So I do want to review a few of these things, and it's funny that we're spending this much time on it because it's really never an issue, but we just want to make sure we have our bases covered here. Look, it's an online class. We're not, online engagement with between students and instructor. That'll be a part of what we do, but it's not the main part, right? We're not just here to talk about, our political opinions and that sort of thing. We treat this subject in the political sciences as scientists, as social scientists. So it's more akin to watching rats run through a maze than it is just, waxing intellectual on our opinions about abortion or Ukraine or that sort of thing. But there will be opportunities to share insights and to engage in dialogue with other students here. So just have a few guidelines that'll guide us here. Be respectful in tone and content. But I also want you to refrain from acquiescence. So here's a problem in pedagogy that doesn't get enough attention here is that oftentimes, particularly in the traditional classroom setting, as a student might have an opinion, but maybe they're not an effective communicator or they don't have a lot of confidence. And so they'll acquiesce to somebody else's opposing opinion just because they feel intimidated. And we don't want that to happen there. So don't feel like you have to give up your opinion or concede something a point if you can make a strong sort of rational thought. Even if you disagree with someone, disagreeing with other people, you can effectively disagree with other people. I've had dozens of marriage counseling sessions which have driven that point into my head here. Acknowledge point two, acknowledge and respect the diversity of all perspectives here. So look, one of my the bones I have to pick with diversity, equity, inclusion, and mostly in higher ed because they do it the worst, but also in the corporate world is that we're very narrow-minded here. We think of diversity just in terms of race and gender, but really it's much more broad than that. I'll tell you, like I said, I've been teaching this a long time, and I love teaching at the community college environment specifically for that reason. I've had a lot of students, particularly in the early 2000s, who were veterans and who were deployed or in various stages of deployment, particularly on the issue on the topic of international relations. That experience is really going to guide a lot of their perspectives in very meaningful and interesting ways. On the flip side, we have more and more high school students who are taking these courses, and maybe that's some of you. And so, the perspectives of a 16-year-old, are certainly different than when I was 16, and different than people who've been in the workforce, for instance, and not necessarily bad or good. They're just different, and we should respect that that's where people come from, right? So there's a lot of different dimensions to diversity here, and just understand that if someone conveys an opinion or idea that's different from you, as we talk about my American politics class, our opinions are really sort of a function of our life experiences and our socialization, and just respect the fact that somebody may just been socialized differently than you here. Obviously, we want to exclude any language that's threatening or intimidating, or that's designed to discourage discourse. Look, if you are a decent human being, you should be fine with people disagreeing with you and understanding that that's an okay thing, because you understand that you're not always right, and sometimes other people get it right. Seems like a very simple concept. Again, after decades of working in the corporate world, you'd be surprised how many big corporate leaders don't get that or abide by that here. So let's just be respectful in our language here, even among those of us who disagree. And most importantly, make points that are supported by logic or data rather than an emotional response. One of the things I recognized in my career is that, particularly when I was younger, if I was passionate at something, in the workplace and somebody opposed me on that, I'd be, it's the Texan in me. I'd be very apt to say, well, you can go to hell. That's not a very effective way of of building one's career. And so I learned and have developed coping strategies that sometimes I would just leave work and I'd be like, I'll come back the next day and deal with this. And you know what? After a night of sleep, I feel a lot better. You guys are probably a little better regulated than I am in that sense. Fortunately, age has toned me down. But again, let's not use emotion as much as data and logic to provide arguments here. Um, that being said, final point here, any student who feels that online communication directed to them or another student represents harassment or threat of violence, please let me know. Even because there's some cases, particularly in discussion board, I might miss it. I from having hired people and managed people, I know I've seen situations over my career where conversations that seem pretty innate can fester and develop over time and create a threatening environment. So don't want that to happen. Again, these aren't things that generally actually ever happen, but we just want to make sure we cover this here. So look, I've got this objectable content statement here. And so a lot of my friends who are full-time faculty members say, the college is cracking down. Students get really upset when we say things that they disagree with. Well, the tricky thing, that's fine for a class like math where nobody, there's no emotion tied to it. Politics by its nature really is the art of taking limited resources and and deciding who gets those resources, right? It is inherently discriminatory. Think about it in the sense that we've got a pool of money. The state has a pool of money. We can fund healthcare for the elderly, or we can fund education for children, but we can't do both, right? There is inherent discrimination built in that, and that unsettles people because we're very anti, discrimination, which in the right context is absolutely how we should be here. But we're going to have conversations. We're going to talk about topics where some people benefit at the expense of others. It's the concept of a zero-sum game, which we'll broach in this course here. So. I just want to mention this to say that look, these topics will come up, and that's okay. And sometimes people may have a solution for dealing with a political event affecting a certain group of people that you find abhorrent. But I would say just look for the rationality behind that. There's still a big gap between hate and careful consideration. And these are things that I can easily say because I'm an adjunct faculty member, and if I get fired, it's not that big of a deal. But like I said, most of you guys are great. I've never really had a problem with this, but just thought it was worth bringing up. All right, let's shift to talking about the actual course now. Course organization, section 3 here. So as I alluded to previously, the course is broken up into weekly modules. There will be 15, I believe, specific weekly modules. I've set 2 weeks aside for the midterm exam and for the final exam to give you time to prepare and review for those. What happens is each Monday morning, starting with next Monday, you'll have a module that opens up to you. That module will include the lecture slides. It'll include a checklist of what you need to complete that week, whatever assignment we have, reading assignments, supplemental videos, all those things would be encapsulated within that module. The idea is that you have everything done by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. So 1 week, get it all wrapped up there. So talking about what's included in these modules, I mentioned the lecture videos and slides. That's where you'll get your attendance code word. I'll also include various instructional videos. So oftentimes I'll find things on YouTube or through other sources that provide a deeper context to what I'm talking about. And so I'll give you those to review. Readings, and particularly for this class, I'll include a lot of supplemental readings. The thing about international relations, it's weird. It was a little bit advantageous that the situation between Russia and Ukraine happened, starting a year ago, because it gave us actually a tremendous context for understanding so much of the course material, and so that enabled me to find relevant readings to provide to students. Obviously, it's otherwise a horrible sort of situation, but that would be an example of readings that I find that support some of the ideas that we're looking to learn here. Classroom discussions. How I've decided to do this. So last year, each week you had a classroom discussion and a weekly essay to try and lighten the load on you and me. This time I'm experimenting with alternating. So 1 week you'll have a classroom discussion. The next week you'll have an essay. The classroom discussions, and there's a grading rubric here in a second I'll cover, but basically your requirement will be to post an original response to a question that I presented to you, and then post at least one response to another student's reply, okay, to engage in that discussion with them. On the weekly essays, these are going to be reflective in nature. There's no right or wrong answer here, but there is substance and less substance. And that's really kind of what I'm thinking on, looking for here is sort of reflection on whatever topic that we're covering that week. Term paper assignment. So before you drop the class because you don't want to write a term paper assignment, this one's actually pretty fun. And you probably still don't believe me, but research can be fun. Even not just for those of us who get paid to do it. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to engage in a political survey. And so, in fact, this week, that's one of your assignments before next week. You'll see in the Getting Started folder is to take a very short political survey. And then I want you to distribute it through your social media channels as well. There's more information there. We're going to take the data from that. And we're actually going to develop a public opinion research paper based off of that. And it's going to be comprised of various small sections. So you're never going to have a long section of paper to submit to me. It's going to be various smaller sections that at the end you're going to be able to combine into a final research paper. So I'll provide more information on that later. 2 exams in this class, midterm and a final. The final is not cumulative, so the midterm will cover everything prior to the midterm, and then the final will cover everything after the midterm. Essentially, each one of those is 15% of your grade. Last semester it was 20%, and I had some students complain about that, so I was like, reflected on it, said, we'll make it less and see how this goes. And then I also have a note here regarding announcements. I think I mentioned before, I'll use the announcement function in Blackboard, so make sure you check it pretty often. Just to rehash here, in terms of attendance, 15% of your grade will be the attendance, so providing those code words by end of day on Sunday of that week. Unless I specify there may be some reason, like maybe on Monday I had trouble getting something loaded, so I might extend a deadline, but I'll let you guys know if that happens. Classroom discussions, like I said, will take place every other week. There's 3 grades you can get here. 0 is you didn't do it. A 1 is you responded to the question but didn't respond to another student, or one or both your responses just wasn't substantive. If your response is, yeah, I agree, and that's it, that's not going to cut it. I really want you to put a little bit more thought and reflection into these things. This isn't hard. Anybody, can do it. I'm just asking you to think a little bit. There's no right or wrong answer. And then the full grade, 2 points. You have posted an original response that's of quality, and you've posted a reply to another student that's also of quality. Weekly essays. So every other week when you're not getting a classroom discussion, you'll have these. This will be a reflection here. Look, there's no maximum or minimum length here. I generally tell students, a couple paragraphs probably makes sense, or 300 to 400 words. That's about 1 page, double spaced, typed out. It's the length of your response is going to be how much, based on how much thought you put into it there. And all early on, as you submit these, if I don't think you're providing enough, I'll knock off your grade slightly and leave you a note so you at least know to fix that in the future. But more information to come on that. Same grading rubric as the other one. I talked about the term paper. Combined, there'll be 20% of your grade, but it'll be a lot of different sort of portions that will add up to the 20%. I'm doing something I haven't done before in online teaching is I'm going to introduce these live sessions. So we'll call it probably like 3 live sessions, and I'll probably include, I don't know, I'm still trying to decide whether I'll include you guys with my American government students. I have fewer. I only have 60 students this semester instead of the 120 or so I had last semester. So this actually works better. But basically, you'll have your option just to choose one of these to attend. It'll be an online session at a very specific time that you can jump in, and we'll have a topic for discussion, or we'll chat about sort of the course and other things. I'm still trying to decide what the format of that will be, but you'll just need to attend one, and that'll be 5% of your grade there. Examinations, I mentioned there, 15% for each. You can see how your final course grade is calculated. Late work policy here. So you'll see my notes there. Generally, it's late after Sunday at 11:59 p.m. for things that are due end of week. Anything else, I'll always give you an 11:59 p.m. due date to get that done. Look, if you turn it in at 12:07 a.m. or 2 a.m. or maybe if you turn it in before I wake up, but although I do wake up pretty early, am I going to count it late? Probably not. I'll probably give you a pass there. So don't think because it's 12:02 like, oh man, now I'm losing points. Probably not going to do that. You're okay. 20% score reduction is what we're looking at there. I tell people, this is modular. I design it to be to where look, again, if I was to teach this class badly, I would just give you all everything you need to do for the semester and say, off you go. Um, I don't even learn well that way. In fact, I had to take a certification course when I started at Wake Tech in online teaching, although I'd done it for many years, and it was structured like that. And I submitted everything late. Yeah, it was a rough semester for me, and I was like, I got no time for this. So that's why I don't organize my class like that either. There. Here's one thing. You'll get to learn about me is that I don't know what word you guys use for this these days, but I don't get too emotionally invested. I do this because I enjoy it, but my ego is not tied up in heavily in teaching, and that's just to say that look, if you identify something like, hey, I don't necessarily agree with how you graded that. And you come to me with that, I'm going to be very open to, I'm going to go back and review it because I've screwed up before and have given someone a grade that, they probably, didn't deserve. Maybe I would thought about it differently after looking at it again. That be to say, just reach out to me. I'm happy to review anything. Particularly when you get into the exams and you have short answer questions there. That's somewhat subjective. I'm happy to look at that. I'm not going to be offended or get upset or anything like that. I had college faculty members that put themselves on that pedestal, and that is not me. An important point here, your official grade. So I keep a spreadsheet because I'm a little old school like that. In fact, actually, till a couple years ago, I actually had a physical grading book that is the official record of your grades. And so I take every time I grade something on Blackboard, I make a note in my spreadsheet of that grade there. I mentioned that to say, don't consider Blackboard will spit out a grade that is an estimation of your final course grade. I don't have good visibility into that. And depending on how it's aggregating things, it can be slightly off. I've added this since I had an issue with this last semester in a student. So that's just to say, don't depend on that. If you want to calculate or track your performance, use the rubric I had above. Take your individual course grades to that point, divide by how many have been completed, and that will give you your official grade. But like I said, I keep it in a spreadsheet. It should hopefully match up to what's in Blackboard. But again, Blackboard's a little tricky like that. Course outline here, you can see a schedule. We are going to focus on heavily in the beginning on international relations theory. We're going to identify a couple key concepts and terms that are going to be very important as we move through the class and eventually transition to the practice of international relations. So what does it actually look like today? How does international relations deal with contemporary issues and problems? That's kind of the transition that we make there, connecting the theoretical to sort of the practical. And that final point there, section 5, is just saying, basically this is a contract. If you submit or agree to the terms of the syllabus as they have been laid out, certainly continue in the course. If there's anything up here you see that you're just like, I'm not doing a term paper, I'm out of here, then I hope you don't drop the class, but you certainly have that option there. So I will stop sharing here. So in terms of what you do next, so for this week, you will see in the Getting Started folder, there are a few items. I've given you a checklist of things you need to do sort of in this kind of shortened week here. First one is that course entry quiz. They are very heavy-handed at Wake Tech on that with us. That's essentially, taking roll the first week. And if you don't show up in that, then basically the university doesn't get funded for you. And it more or less kicks you out of the class. So make sure, if you haven't done already, when you're done with this video, take that course entry quiz. The code word. So you will have a code word, a chance, your first assignment for watching this lecture video. The thing about the code words is they're always going to be something stupid and asinine and not related to anything important. So usually it's me looking around my desk to see what I have. And lo and behold, right now I've got Chick-fil-A sauce on my desk. So Chick-fil-A, can make that your code word. Chick-fil-A, provide that to me. The weird thing is I haven't had Chick-fil-A in like 2 months, so I'm not sure why I have the sauce on my desk here. But Chick-fil-A, provide that in the code word assignment that you have here, and that'll give you your first attendance credit for the semester. The survey, you'll see the instructions and link there. Take that political survey. A note about the survey, it's completely anonymous. I can't tell, if Tim Smith really hates Joe Biden or something like that, I won't know about it. And I also don't care because this class isn't about your opinions on international relations. It's about giving you the structural knowledge to develop and formulate opinions moving forward. And ultimately, that sort of segues into, what's my goal for this class, is to be able to evaluate things going on in the world from the some of the perspectives and frameworks that you're going to learn about in this class. Um, I am Texan, which means that I am related to people with very interesting political beliefs. But I've also traveled the world, and so I've seen it all, heard it all, or most of it, anyways. And so there's very little you're going to do or say that's going to offend me. And I, as a political scientist, see sort of people's perspectives and beliefs as being cumulative over the course of their experiences in life. So all that to say that. My opinions aren't really what we're focusing on here. It's giving you guys the knowledge to sort of understand the world of international relations around us here. So week 1 module will be open to you by Monday, maybe on Sunday, depending on if I get it in early, and that's when you can get into the actual course material. You'll find in the lessons folder there will be module folders, and you'll be able to access that at that point. I think I covered most of it, but like I said, just check that getting started folder, because that'll give you everything you need to get going. Looking forward to having you in this course here. Like I said, the big takeaway: communication, communication, communication. If you need anything, if you have uncertain about anything, need restaurant advice or recipes, feel free to reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. Enjoying getting to know more about you. In fact, that's one of the other things to do at first is jump into that discussion folder, introduce yourself. I've got a few questions there you can answer. Thanks so much. Hope you enjoy this course, and we'll see you on Monday.